I've heard the quote, he who has a why can overcome any how, many times before, and I thought I understood it. Someone who wants something bad enough will find a way to get it done. And that's true, partly. When I ran today, I ran without any content coming through my earphones. I didn't even have earphones. There was no music, there was no podcast, there was no inspirational speech by Jordan Peterson or Jocko Willink. Nope. It was just me and my thoughts. And my thoughts drifted toward this quote. And as I thought about it, I started to question, well, what is my why? And with that, I was transported back 11 months and a few hundred miles away to a suburb outside of Chicago. I was sitting in a room with 12 or so other people of all ages, ethnicities, life experiences, but all united through the game of basketball. We were there to learn from one of the best in the basketball training industry, Drew Hamlin. And that first night, we took 5 minutes to write out what he called our "why should I train with you" statement. The time started, I looked at my page, and I didn't know what to write. Why should anyone train with me? The only thing I could think of were everything that I wasn't. I wasn't a former professional. I didn't even play at the university level. I was never the best player on any of my teams. I couldn't even beat elite high school players all the time in one-on-one. Most of the time. These negative thoughts cascaded over me. But to be perfectly honest, I was quite comfortable with them. You see, this feeling of this feeling of lack of self-confidence had been basically my normal state of mind since middle school. Sure, I'd done a serviceable job of projecting a confident front. I had to. In the world of competitive sport, you show weakness of that kind and it becomes blood in the water with sharks circling around you. So I put my head down, I put one foot in front of the other, and while I acknowledged all these negative thoughts I had held, I didn't really process them in any way. This led to problems not only in sports, but with relationships, with my family, with religion, for lack of a better phrase, with just the purpose of life. Then, a few years ago, I begun to figure life out. I used basketball as a catalyst to start putting my life in order. I hadn't reached my potential as a basketball player, and that ate at me. So I strived to fix that. I worked out before 7 a.m. for 100 days in a row. I started to try to put my life together in other aspects. I tried my best as a family member, as a friend, as an employee, and as a coach. I even documented all this shift in mindset on YouTube and through a blog. Life got better. And then, I'm not even sure what happened, but I got complacent. I took a job, which, although it allowed me to do many of the things that I love doing, drained energy from me. I had stopped pursuing becoming the best basketball player I could be. And I've always been good at personal finance in terms of saving money. So I lived at home, and while my net worth continued to increase, so did feelings of restlessness and what am I looking for? I guess insufficiency? To sum all that up, I got comfortable. My life didn't spiral out of control. It wasn't darkness that I'd fallen into, but rather just a blandness towards life in general. So I stared at that paper. Why would anyone want to train with me? And some of the good things started to come to my mind. I had developed through trial and error efficient ways to improve players' skills and their decision making. I'd watched a whole lot of film so I could confidently state what I believe, and I was an effective communicator so I could get those points across. I wrote these things down with a couple of other things. And then Drew did something that I will forever be grateful to him for. He called me out in front of the whole room, well, me and then another young guy, to read these statements. The other guy went first, and my heart dropped. His statement sounded exactly like mine. And when Drew asked who could identify with his statement, myself and everyone else's hand in the room went up in the air. I knew what was about to happen, but I swallowed my pride and began to read out. I have an awesome understanding of the game of basketball that I've developed through years of film study and can. That's enough. I sat there, head down, not surprised that those words had been spoken, interrupting me, but embarrassed nonetheless. To be perfectly honest, boys, those were shit. Again, he wasn't wrong. The truth does hurt sometimes. He went on to explain why. These were generic. Everyone in our industry could identify with them. They didn't separate ourselves at all. He wanted to know what we could provide as trainers. I didn't know. I was just an average community college player that wanted to help players get better. I said that I would forever be grateful for what Drew did, and here's why. He found my why. Well, he guided me on the path so that I could find my why for myself. He got me to tell my story in front of everybody in the room, and I'll do my best to summarize it. I was a good little player growing up, good enough to be asked to play on the best team in the city. And on that team, and every team I played on for the rest of my life, I was never the best player on it, and I was okay with that. I found my role as a leader, as a floor general who sacrificed his game for the greater good of the team. In reality, it was self-consciousness that led to my style of play on the floor. It was the fact that I hadn't worked hard enough on my game to truly be confident in it. The most shots that I ever took in a high school game was 9. And for years, I held this as a badge of honor, when in reality, it was the epitome of selfishness. I did not help my team by passing up shots that I should have taken. For example, I passed up a shot in my grade 12 year with about 30 seconds left that could have sent our team to a provincial final. I rationalized it for years, saying that earlier in that possession I had hurt my knee, which I had. I had stumbled back into the play, and when the ball got swung to me at the top of the key with nobody around, I made a one more pass because I thought, well, my knee isn't healthy enough to shoot this shot. The ball ends up getting deflected and we retain the basketball, and I get subbed out. And I watched the last number of seconds of my high school career from the bench. I simply had not wanted the responsibility and looked to pass it off to somebody else. I had given up all of my dreams in basketball other than that one last team success, a provincial championship. And when we came up short, I left the game resentful. I didn't touch a basketball for 9 months. I didn't even want to look at one. I was hurt. I felt as though I had given so much to the game of basketball and it had given me nothing in return. I played again, and the love of the game returned and it returned more abundantly than I'd had it before, and I wanted to share that with other people. Drew listened to all of this, and he asked the right questions to pull out this information from me, while the rest of the room listened silently, intently. He then asked me to summarize it in a few sentences, and then a couple of less, and finally, in one. The game of basketball hurt me beyond belief, and my mission is that no kid feels the same pain that I did. My why. It certainly hasn't been terribly easy sailing since then, however. As I prepared to launch my training business, Atlas Basketball, North America was shut down by a pandemic, and I really struggled for that month and a half. The future of my real jobs was up in the air, and I struggled to make content that I actually wanted to make, and as a result, I didn't do anything. I continued to feel restless at home, a young man with the means to move out, but all the excuses in the world to stay. I was comfortable. Then, life got back to normal. Well, kind of normal. I work maintenance at a golf course. I love the job, I love the crew, I love the hours. 5:30 in the morning to 1:30 in the afternoon. I teach golf. I love golf, I love teaching, and our students are often beginners who are just picking up the game. My bosses have been tremendously good to me over the years, and it's a pleasure to work for them. And basketball returned. I had access to a facility, and I reached out to most of the better players in the city to come through. There was no expectation of them to work out with me. I had half the court for the workouts, the other half was open gyms. No hard feelings if they didn't want to work out with me. During that time, I also started training a group of highly talented female players. And there was one day we were working out when one of the best guy players in the city came over and asked to join the girls' workout. I felt validated, and so did the girls. My days were full, and I hesitate to use the word busy because busy has a negative connotation attached to it. Life was trending in the right direction. In fall, a friend of mine got married, and that left a mutual friend of ours without a roommate. In the span of 3 days, I went from no prospects of moving out to agreeing to move in 10 days later. And this has been incredible. For one, my roommate is extremely into fitness, loves working out, and even has built a gym in our basement. One day, he asked me to do a Murph, and I said, yes, absolutely. What is it? And he replied, it's a 1 mile run, and then 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, and 300 squats, followed by another mile run. And I completed it. He asked me to do a beep test, and I happened to beat him as he was starting to train for a physical test he had to do in the next month. In fact, since I've moved in, I haven't missed a day of working out to some capacity in that time span. I also got the chance to run my first real clinics. And although the first session started off, rather modestly, it was only about half the capacity that I had budgeted for. I did my best to teach those kids what I could using the restrictions that Basketball Manitoba had given us. The next month, a few of those kids came back and a few more joined, and the month after was the same thing. And all I was focused on was trying to help those kids that were in the gym with me without really caring about trying to attract any more. And then another shutdown. And this time I was prepared. I realized the last time that if I wanted to produce content, it had to be content that I myself just wanted to make for me. So what did I do? I reached out to mentors, Drew being one of them, and asked for 20-minute conversations that I could record. I had two intentions with these conversations. One, I wanted to learn something that I didn't know before. And two, I want them, the other person, to enjoy their time talking with me. This has led me to reach out to former teammates, content creators, and probably most importantly, my 94-year-old grandma. Oftentimes, these conversations lead to much longer ones that go on well past the recording has stopped. I've begun to curate my social media to only show me people that are striving towards worthy ideals or a better life. I started to feel actual confidence that can only come from doing things. Those couple of years ago, when I thought I had started to figure what life was about, I described a motto that I held and still do. The wind of the world blows towards good. And I used an allegory of a sailor setting out for treasure to describe it. Two of the components that the sailor had to understand in order to achieve that goal of finding treasure were the ability to reorient yourself periodically to make sure that you were still headed in the direction that you were hoping to. And two, the fact that life is kind of like weather on the seas. There are times when the wind is at your back and the sun's shining, and you have to be confident enough to drop your sails and go full steam ahead. And other times, it'll be a storm. And all you can do is drop anchor and try to survive. And well, I had forgotten this. While I had survived various storms over the last number of years, I had simply just dropped my anchor and not proceeded to go anywhere. And I guess now the sun is starting to shine and the wind is blowing, and I'm in the process of raising that anchor back up. He who has a why can overcome any how. Today, as I've wrote this out first and now spoke it into existence, I realized I didn't find my why back in Illinois at that basketball clinic. I found a fragment of it. It is my why in terms of basketball, but what I realized is I have a much greater why. Just as basketball specifically caused me a lot of pain, I've also experienced the pain that only just life itself can bring. Life can hurt us beyond belief. My mission is to help people overcome this and to find purpose in their lives.